Here we go.
All right, so we had a question in our practice EOC before spring break that was about phylogenetic trees.
I wasn't here.
That's okay. It was similar to this. Several of you guys actually got the question correct, and we haven't taught it yet, so kudos. But here's an example of a phylogenetic tree. So scientists are studying the evolutionary history of a group of plants in the United States, and they develop an evolutionary tree that looks like this. So from this evolutionary tree, which statement do you think would be most correct? A, B, C, or D?
D.
Okay, it is D. Why?
Because they're in the same bracket.
Very good. Yeah, so he said it's D, 5 and 6, because they're in the same bracket. Very good. At first instinct, a lot of people today have said that it's that it's B, 2 and 3, but if you look at 2 and 3, they are in separate brackets. So, very good. All right, so I'm actually going to come around and you guys are going to work in a group and you're going to have lizard cards.
I don't have any technical but go back to your most common answer. Already part that in, and then I'm having to generate the part. So that was my uncle's son, first cousin, my great uncle's son.
Okay, so in your Ziploc bag that you have in front of you, there are 16 different images of lizards. So the type of lizards, they're anole lizards that you're going to be looking at. What I want you to do is to sort them into as many different groups as you possibly can. When you are sorting them, you can look at the picture, how do they appear in the photographs, whatever it is that you decide. I want you to be able to explain your rationale. Okay, so in a moment, once we're finished sorting them, you are going to get up and you're going to look at how your other classmates have sorted them as well. So each group will only need one sheet of paper, and on your sheet of paper, I want you to explain the reasoning behind the way that you have sorted your lizards. Okay, so you're going to explain the rationale of why you did that. If you picked a certain body feature, make sure that you are talking about potentially what could be the advantages or the disadvantages of having that body feature. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes, and I've got the timer that's going to be going up on the board. So go ahead and start sorting.
You write on number paper. Figure.
This guy's flat.
Well, we're given something and we're told to do something, so we would like to produce it ourselves. Letter might be giving us figures. If I'm given a based off of those something color, so we have green, and green.
Oh my gosh. Oh no, guys, look.
So, I think that's not for this vibrant color. Now, this, I think we take this one and this one. This one.
Oh, there it is.
Not sure the stick on the pink one.
What we doing with sticky?
Like this.
But you do need it in a type of paper and explain the rationale.
Like camouflage, but the lesser is extent. I'm trying to figure out how we're gonna format this. I guess like this. Camouflage, but like I said, to a lesser extent.
No, but like they look like this thing on the person. It's not really camouflage per se, but it's like.
Those four. I say we put those four right here. Because keep them separate but keep them close. Because these are fully camouflaged, these are partially camouflaged. Those are most likely related.
Okay, they all have.
And then those ones, they don't look like nothing.
It's the lighting.
Yeah.
I think we just put them in their own separate islands. Like, we have these separate but close, and these on their own.
I told you. What? That was my idea. That's all. What? No, that has a lot. Has a lot. Green.
Alpha, beta, delta. Let's just do alpha, group, beta, group, delta, group, omega.
Okay, well.
I know, I'm just saying, I'm just saying, we have the group.
Which one is this guy?
Do this one,
Which got the
alpha, beta.
Okay.
This one's gonna be delta. You know the symbols or no?
No.
All right, the symbols.
Wait, so where did you switch to? There's a round one.
Okay. So you'll need to piece of note paper and write that down.
Because they feel like the long tail lizards. Mimic.
Long tail. I wouldn't say to mimic snakes. I would just say long, narrow tail.
What about this?
You got about a minute and a half left. Make sure that you're getting your category descriptions down on a piece of paper.
Actually, I'm gonna name this one complete. I'm gonna do delta. Very similar.
It's okay. Are you labeling them? The sticky note? That's fine. I'll get you new ones.
Yeah, we have delta dash B group delta dash. This one, camouflage but to a lesser extent.
All of them? Yeah, not all of them. They were.
Luckily, alpha and beta have like C and
What?
I think it's because in case we have extra groups. And then, colors.
Long tail. We did it.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so you should have your groups separated. You should have an explanation on your groups. And if you use your sticky note instead of notebook paper, that's fine, but raise your hand so I can give you another sticky note. Everybody's going to need 2 sticky notes. You both need 2. Yep, everybody needs 2, so 2 individually. Okay, on your 2 sticky notes, I want you to take your pencil and put your initials in the corner. Okay, so kind of small in the corner. You all have 2. and you're going to take your sticky note with your initials and your pencil with you. You're going to go around and look at how other classmates have separated or categorized these lizards. One sticky note is going to be a question that you are going to ask that group. Okay, so on one of your sticky notes, put a question mark for me. That lets you know this is the one that you are asking a question to the group. The other one is going to be a positive feedback. So for your second one, put a smiley face on it. So you are going to have 5 minutes to walk around, look at the way that your classmates have classified these lizards, and you have to leave one positive comment and one question throughout the class. Okay? All right, go ahead and go through that. Can we put them on two different groups? We can do 2 different groups.
Let me see what's wrong. We just go through things. I know. Well, that's what I said. Do we have? Short tail. Brown with long tail. With short tail. Green. And the line. Yep. I don't know, but I think something like that.
I gotta get my
I
question.
ask myself that question every day.
You asked me stuff a lot. I just got to think about it.
No, you can all read it exactly the same.
Right on your mind. How it's always just
Oh, big one.
Oh, if I hear about this, you're fine.
Great mistake.
My question is, huh?
I know you.
Well, that's I like, what's my question?
It's all right. Very organized.
Very organized.
So why aren't
There you go.
So you can ask your question about like how the first 3 have really dealt with the other 2 don't.
Group trying to be- Why didn't you just do Hey, why didn't you just do I'm legitimately asked, why didn't you all just do A, B, C, D?
Okay, but then we had to ask an actual question.
Okay.
I don't know what to ask.
Why is he blue?
I see food.
He's all the colors.
We just stick on table?
Yep, just stick it on the table. You got about 2.5 minutes left. Make sure it's an insightful question.
I don't know what to ask. They're just lizards on branches.
Okay. So is their lizard on a branch different than your lizard on a branch? Do they put them in different groups?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you see that's different than from when you?
We did it based on the colors and the tails.
Okay.
I like the group.
Okay. So you do color and tail and they get camouflage. So maybe you can ask this question to take into consideration
I like
the
the
length
grouping.
of their tail.
I like the descriptions. I don't like it goes triangle.
That's what you did.
Choose A, B, C, D.
I'm just gonna write something down.
I'm too dyslexic for that.
I don't think I don't think like in the camera Oh, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Can't feel it. Good Lord, it's facing right towards me. Just Birdsong. Camera's not facing it over here. Facing me.
You already know your question and your good one. Okay. Have you read it? You know what you're answering yet?
There were people over here.
looked at it so well.
This is not a description, I don't know what this is.
Whatever my surgery has changed.
Question.
Yeah.
That's not what that is.
I don't even understand what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not what that means. I don't know what that
I would know, but like, why do you think it's not on a green?
Yeah.
They probably just needed.
Oh wait, think about it.
I didn't say that.
I know. No, those two are not, or those three are not on green. Why do you think that is? They're homophobic.
I'm talking about this one. Why are you thinking this is alright?
Okay, guys, make your way back to your seat. Alright, we're making our way back to our seats. We've gotten rid of both of our sticky notes. Take a second. It's okay to try to decipher the handwriting. What are some of the questions your classmates asked? Were they questions that your group thought about more?
There is no
Why or something. Okay. So remember, I also said that you could put like why that would be beneficial or not beneficial. So that might be any ones you didn't say when you grouped them that they'd be camouflage, and then not camouflage you didn't say what
Yeah, how can you just explain why we grouped them?
like yeah. So that's why that question.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Also, Miss Birdsong said.
The difference is for this one and this one, that those have lines down their back.
Yeah.
And silver is.
Mine was better.
Okay, so let's listen. Would any group like to share their comments that were left for them? Any group want to share? Okay, CT is gonna share, so you guys listen.
We got good description.
Okay, so there's our positive. They had good descriptions. What was one of the questions?
Why did you decide to separate them by body types and not colors? I mean,
Okay.
we did separate by colors. You got a whole group of green.
All right, so they kind of did. He says separate by colors. Guys, listen. As you were walking around and looking how other classmates were classifying these lizards, did everybody have the same initial idea as you? No, is that okay? Yeah. Okay, so classification is something that we do in science to help us better understand things. We have the opening of the cladogram. I loved walking around to this group. Can I show it? Okay, so I was walking around to this group, and in their description, they even drew for us a cladogram. Okay, so in their cladogram, they initially separated them from brown versus green, and then from the color separation, they divided them out even more. And so they were able to put it into a picture representation. That was awesome. Good job. So that does lead us into cladograms. How do we read them? How do we make them? And then when we're talking about our lizards, how do we know which one's right versus which one's wrong? Well, to find out more information, we're going to want to look at different things such as DNA analysis. We can look at the base pairing and see the DNA and how closely related it is to other organisms. We can also look at field observations. What would I be doing in a field observation with lizards? What would I be observing? Okay, mating patterns. What else? Okay, figuring out where certain ones are located, like just geographically or like in that specific area. Either way, okay? I can look and see where they are geographically across the span of the area or specifically where they're located in that environment. Is there anything else that I could look at? Field observations, their diet, what are they eating? Anything else? Would you say that probably in order to get these pictures, they were out in the field doing field observations? Yeah. You guys noticed that some of them were camouflaged better than others, right? And then we can also take experimental data. So all of this would allow us to be able to build a cladogram. And so when we look at a cladogram, we can kind of think of it as a picture that's showing relationships. So I've got one on the board, and let's pretend like you are where it says you. And let's pretend like you have a sister. So who would A be marked as? Yeah, so A would be either your mom or your dad. Let's pretend like it's mom. So A is mom, which means B would be who? Your grandparents. So who's C gonna be that has your cousins? Yeah, either your aunt or your uncle. So it's showing you how closely related organisms are going to be based off of certain characteristics. So here are two different cladograms that have been given to us from these lizards. And the question then becomes, which one's more correct? Well, one scientist grouped them based off of location. So if you've got them divided into 4 different areas because they are occupying geographically 4 different locations. Then another scientist went in and they put them into 3 different groups. So they were looking at where they living in reference to a tree. Are they living on the top in the tree canopies? Are they living like in the middle of the tree? Are they living in the grass that's underneath the tree? And then so it was, again, here's 2 scientists that's using very good information coming up with a phylogenetic tree. Both could be correct. One is not more correct than the other. So the way that you divided them out, even though you did them differently, there's not necessarily, based off of the information that you have right now, one that's going to be more correct than the other. But these phylogenetic trees allow us to look and see how closely related organisms are. So here's actually a video of some scientists that are going out, they're catching these lizards and finding out more information, looking at their toe pads. What are toe pads? Yeah, their toes. Like typically when you think of a toe pad, you think of a tree frog. But lizards also have these toe pads. It's gonna let them walk up. I've noticed several of you did mention the length of the tail. So some were a lot longer, skinnier, others seem shorter. All right, so I'm gonna push play so you can see the field work, but as this is playing, I need you to take all of your lizard cards and put them back in your Ziploc bag, and I'll come around and get those.
You ready? Ready? Are you ready? I got a second.
The diversity of animals
Yeah,
on our
that's gonna be
planet
me
is
when I get
breathtaking.
ready.
Hey, what we doing with these kids now?
Millions of species adapted to all kinds of habitats. Ever since Darwin, understanding how so many species evolved has been a major quest of biology and biologists like Jonathan Mosses. In the Caribbean, he's studying a remarkable group of lizards, He's finding clues to their origins in their bodies, their lifestyles, and in their DNA.
There's one out there.
These lizards are providing fresh insight into both how new species form and why our world is filled with so
So
many
last week
creatures.
we talked about speciation. You have these speciation events that occur, creating these different species of lizards.
I don't see you, lizard.
Here in Puerto Rico, Jonathan is stalking lizards called anoles.
Okay, here we go.
With almost 30 years of practice, he's a pro at catching them.
There we go. He's okay. That very strong.
Anybody ever caught a lizard like that before?
At all.
No, with like a noose looking thing.
Fine looking specimen.
Puerto Rico's anoles all feed on similar food, mostly small prey like spiders and crickets. But they divide up their habitats in a clever way.
Did you notice the ears on that lizard? Remember the lesson right before spring break? What came first?
The long-tailed slender species Jonathan caught lives in grasses and bushes and is called a grass bush anole. On the low parts of tree trunks and on the ground, a longer-legged, stockier species forages, called a trunk ground anole. And higher up the tree lives another anole species.
On twigs and small branches like these, we find very small anoles with really short legs.
This slender lizard is called a twig anole. Further up the tree is yet another species.
High up in the canopy, there's a large green lizard with big toe pads. He lives high off the ground. There's one right there.
Like apartment dwellers, each species lives in a different vertical space. But here, each floor offers unique evolutionary opportunities to its inhabitants. The fact that lizards differ in leg length and toe pad size, depending on where they live, suggests that these differences in traits are adaptations to the lizard's habitats.
Here's a good tree over here.
To test whether that is in fact the case, I came here to help Jonathan conduct some experiments.
Yeah, these lizards are very cooperative.
We begin by comparing the running ability of two lizards, one with long legs, the other with short ones.
Let's do some tests. Let's start with this little lizard here and see how fast it can run up this broad surface.
All right, I'll catch him if he makes it to the end.
All right, here we go. There he comes. Wow. She's a sprinter. Exactly. She lives at the bottom of trees, right in the open. She catches prey on the ground, so she has to run down quickly to get them.
The shorter-legged twig lizard is not nearly as fast. It seems like a disadvantage. Why aren't their legs longer? Jonathan puts a twig lizard on a thin branch to demonstrate.
All right, let's see how he does. Here we go.
It's pretty comfortable there.
Yeah,
Just sort of scurrying along like a balance beam.
this is what they love.
Instead of speed, the twig lizard's legs provide a firm grasp.
All right, now let's try the other one.
So this is the sprinter.
This is the sprinter. Let's see how she fares on this little stick. Look how ungainly she is. Her legs are too long for this. So you can see on these narrow surfaces, long legs are a disadvantage.
On twigs, long legs only increase the chance of falling. So ground lizards have evolved long legs, and twig lizards short ones that enabled their lifestyles. Next, we compare how well two species can climb the slick surfaces of leaves. Anoles have different sized toe pads on their feet. We'll see if these help them navigate different environments.
So it's time for Lizard Olympics Part 2.
All right, I'm game for that.
Here's the brown lizard. Let's see if you can hang on and move up it. Oh, no. Couldn't even hang on.
Did not hang on.
Let's try it again. There he goes. He's getting up there. He's able to move up, but not very easily. All right, let's do another species.
All right.
Oh my goodness. Guy.
That's an anole.
This is the big canopy lizard. Let's see how he does.
Well, it's not a fair contest. He's so huge. There's no way for him to hold up his weight.
What do you think now, smart guy?
Okay, he proved me wrong. Pretty impressive.
He's using the little microscopic hairs on his toe pads to bond with the surface, and that's what holds him up.
And his toe pads are bigger than other lizards?
Yes, they are. He's a bigger lizard, but even for his size, he has particularly large.
Stop there. Very simple video. But that lets you see, going and doing field observations, they were able to see where and why they lived in certain areas, the advantages versus disadvantages to long legs or short legs or the larger toe pads. Because it all has to do with how they're specialized to live in a certain area. If you guys remember going back to the beginning of the year, we studied ecology and we had the term niche. What is niche? The job, yes. Okay, so it's the species job, where it lives. So each one of these anole lizards are going to have their own specific niche. They have different adaptations that they have evolved to allow them to be successful in specific areas. So you had some, like that really big one that we saw at the end, that makes it really great to live up in the top of the canopies. It can crawl on all of those bigger leaves to get around very easily. You had the trunk crown ones, then you went to the twig ones. Remember those were really short legs. It showed them like a balance beam. It was able to maneuver itself. Not fast, it wasn't running, but its legs were short enough that it could stay on a really small twig. And then you had the trunk ground lizards that were really robust and chunky in appearance, and they had a lot longer legs. They were pretty speedy. And so this is all leading up to us figuring out how we classify organisms and how we can put them into a phylogenetic tree and pick out evolutionary relationships. And so we have, alright, so taxonomy is the science of classifying organisms. So classification is about organizing the life forms into groups. Science wants to organize them naturally, just like you naturally want to organize things. So how many of you have like a sock drawer in your bedroom? Right, so you've got that drawer that is organized for your socks. You have a probably specific spot in your closet where you put your jackets. Right, you're organizing things without even like really thinking about it because it's natural to us. And so classification is this organizing form that we are going to now be doing with life groups. So phylogeny is the study of evolutionary relationships. Biologists now group organisms into categories that represent evolutionary descent. So a hyena, we got a picture of a hyena for you based off what you know of hyenas. How would you group a hyena? More closely related to a dog or more closely related to a cat?
Dog.
Okay,
Honestly,
dog.
I don't know. They look like a mixture of both.
Okay, we've got a dog, we've got a I don't know. How many's going dog? Most of us in here. How many's going cat? Nobody's going cat. How many's going I don't know right now? You've got me confused. Okay, one. So pretty much everybody in here is going to say a hyena is more closely related to a dog. I'm going to show you a phylogenetic tree and tell me if that changes your answer at all.
See, y'all was wrong.
So here we have like the feline group, and here we have the canine group. So without giving you the answer just yet, I want to go through how we're going to read these phylogenetic trees, come back to this at the end, and then you guys tell me based off of the evidence which one it's more closely related to. So let's figure out how we're going to read these phylogenetic trees. Believe it or not, the two that I have up on the board, A and B, are the exact same information. At first glance though, if I look at this, does it look like it's the same? No. In A, it's fish then a frog. In B, it's frog then a human. So how is it possibly that these guys are giving me the exact same information? Okay, you gotta look at the branches.
And when you follow the branches, it still shows the same tree. It's just in a different order.
Very good, yeah. You follow the branches. When you're looking at the branches, it's showing you the same tree. It's just in a different order, just like CT said. So I've got one drawn on the board, and then I have these dots. Everywhere I have a dot, that's called a node. And you can flip the node and still get the same information. So here it says CB. I can flip it at the node and it reads DC, and it's still the same thing. That's what happened here. So if I flip it this node, it took my fish from this side to I flipped it, and now it's on this side. Okay, the human and the cat, it's cat human. Flipped would be human cat. Same thing that's right there. So these are giving me the same information. So let's look at one together. You have this cladogram on your paper. It's human, bonobo, chimpanzee, and gorilla. And does anybody know what the parentheses like the 46 and 48 stands for?
Chromosomes.
Chromosomes, very good. Okay, so this is based off of like DNA as well as number of chromosomes. If we're looking, who is the chimpanzee according to this phylogenetic tree the most closely related to?
Bonobo.
Very good, the bonobo. Okay, so right here the chimpanzee and the bonobo are sharing that branch together. Fork. And then what conclusions can be drawn about the relationship between the humans and the chimpanzees?
They're more closely related than
Very good. So the human and the chimpanzee are going to be more closely related than human and gorilla. You got another one?
They once shared a common ancestor.
Okay, very good. They once shared a common ancestor. So here, at the base of the tree, we call that the root of the tree, and that represents a common ancestor. So it's another piece of evidence you can infer from here. Any more? Okay. The human, bonobo, and chimpanzee are all equally related to the gorilla. That's another one. They're all equally related to the gorilla. We'll talk more about that in a second.
what you read for it. So what was that? A lot? Like the other diagram, is that just lots?
No, it's the way that it's written, and I'll show you some more. We'll go into it. This is what we call an outgroup. So anything beyond the outgroup is equally related to the outgroup. Like so, the human's equally related to the gorilla as the chimpanzee is to the gorilla.
That's what that is talking about.
Okay, so again, that base here, this is going to represent that common ancestor. When you see this occurring, it's speciation events occurring. What can cause speciation to occur? That was on our last test. It is due to evolution, but like what happens? Isolation, very good. So when two species become isolated over a long period of time, they could end up developing into different species. So branches on the tree do represent speciation, and the event that causes speciation is known as the fork in the tree. So this is the fork that's occurring. So here, what would be considered my outgroup? Moss. Moss is going to be my outgroup. Who is the rose going to be most closely related to?
Pine.
The pine. Very good. Alright, so here's a common misconception. We kind of touched base on it, but just to touch base again. Misconception here is that B and A are more closely related than DNA, when in fact, that's not the case. So, yes, it's A, B, C, D, and in the alphabet, A is closer to B, but when we're talking about our phylogenetic trees, you've got to go back and follow the branches. So here, you've got C and D that are more closely related. Then B is going to be more closely related to C and D, and then B, C, and D are all equally related to your outgroup, which is A. So this branch, again, I can take the node and flip it on the node, and it's still going to give me the same information. So every one of these here at the bottom is still giving me all the same information as the one at the top. You see how you're flipping those? So we've used the term phylogenetic tree and we've used the term cladogram. What's the difference between the two? Well, really, scientists, myself included, use the terms interchangeably, but if you really want to know the specifics of it, a phylogenetic tree is more of like the true evolutionary relationships where the branches actually represent time, how long the event has occurred, and then cladograms are going to be more representing a hypothesis about the group of organisms' ancestry. And the cladogram is just, it's a diagram that shows clades and how they are linked by these shared traits. And here, I've got added different traits. These are what we call a derived characteristic. So where you see the term like heterotroph, what's a heterotroph? Yeah, okay, it can't make its own food, it's gonna have to consume its food. So a heterotroph is a consumer. So would you say that insects, crocodiles, birds, apes, and rodents all have to consume food? Yeah, so they have this same derived characteristic that they're all heterotrophs. So that's the first one that's listed. Again, your phylogenetic tree branched length often represents the amount of genetic change or prediction in time that's occurring. In cladograms, the branch length doesn't really mean anything, it's arbitrary. So let me ask you a question based off of this cladogram. What characteristics do the alligator and crow have in common? Very good. So it's listed right here, the opening in front of the eye. Anything above it, the alligator and the crow are going to have in common. Okay. Do they also have two openings behind the eye? Yes. Do they also have amniotic eggs? Do they also have 4 limbs? Do they also have a bony skeleton? Do they also have a backbone? Yes. Okay, so anything that's going to be listed below the alligator and crow on their point of the line is going to be derived characteristics that it has. Now, I mentioned the word clade when I talked about cladogram. So a really good way to visualize this and help you figure out how organisms are more closely related to another is if you group them in a clade. So with that, I can take scissors, and if I go and I cut a line, whatever comes off with that line is going to be more closely related, but it's only a one-cut thing. So here, I go in and I cut here, and then that blue comes off. All of that blue is going to be more closely related to each other than it is to anything else on this cladogram. Here, I'm going to cut there. That green, more closely related to each other than anything else on the cladogram. These at the bottom would not work. Notice how we'd have to take 2, cuts in order to put those related. So those are not going to be as closely related as that is. Okay, so one thing that you can do when looking at them if needed is circle the clades that they are in. So a derived character or a derived characteristic is a trait that arose in a common ancestor and all its descendants share this. So what is the characteristics that every one of these things have in common? There's only one. Lungs. Every one of these have a lung or has lungs. Okay? But does a lungfish have limbs? No, it does not. If we look at amniotic eggs, anything that is below the term amniotic egg is not going to have it. Anything above it would have amniotic eggs. So, hang on. Back to my question at the beginning now. Which one is it more closely related to? The cat. It is in the feline. There's your hyena. Hyenas are more closely related to cats.